Engaging in courageous conversations. Discussions on topics such as equity, diversity, inclusion, policy, social issues, change management, leadership in schools, and many other related topics will often require of participants to be engaged in a level of honesty that is often not expected of many other professional conversations. It demands a courageous conversation. I am sure we have heard this term a lot, and maybe more so in the last 5 years. Rosen 2015 states we all dread them. We can call these courageous conversations because they oftentimes require so much courage to handle. On the other hand, there is the other option, avoidance. We might have tried that option before, even several times. The reality is that in a situation where a courageous conversation needs to take place, avoidance will only lead to decline or worsening of the situation. Therefore, we must engage to grow and to learn. How do we engage in this conversation? After being involved in a number of conversations at workshops, conferences, and undergrad and graduate classrooms, especially in the last 3 to 5 years, I wish to share a few of my personal principles that I consider good practice. Note, I did not say best practice. We tend to overuse that concept. Principle number 1, come prepared to learn. One of the most profitable learning experiences for me over the last 7 years has been teaching online and engaging in online discussions. Most often, I am exposed to a wealth of perspectives shared by my students. I always walk away with something new, something I can place in my toolbox, something I can apply to make my teaching practice more effective and engaging. It therefore bothers me when I meet educators who have no willingness to learn anything new, especially those who work and operate in diverse schools and need to understand their students more. How do we engage if we do not know? Principle number 2, come prepared to unlearn. More and more of us are understanding the need to unlearn some of those biases and stereotypes we have been taught by formal, informal, and institutionalized systems. Another part of unlearning is what I call unwiring. We have become so wired to view others in certain deficit manner, and there is a serious need for us to consciously unlearn some of these biases, prejudice, and deficit thinking. What were you taught about Black people, or especially Black students? What were you taught about those who identify as LGBTQ? What were you taught about Muslims? What were you taught about the history and life of indigenous peoples? How have you been wired to react and respond? How have you been wired to value certain people and undervalue others? This calls for personal reflection. This calls for us to examine our practice as educators. When I asked one of you what you expect from a course like this, I had many excellent responses, but I wish to share one response, and that is, this course is one that I hope will challenge my assumptions, push me outside my comfort zone, and help me to be a better principal and parent. I am passionate about our schools being a meaningful part of our communities and a place that all students want to walk through the door and feel they belong. The reality is we have work to do, and that work feels urgent. And this is from one of my students in this course, 1041. I smiled when I read this. This is someone who is honest about what is happening within our schools. This is someone who realizes the need for action, the need for meaningful engagement that will lead to change, the need for a courageous conversation. Principle number 3, check your facts. Far too many times we enter these conversations without the facts. We allow our personal ideas and belief systems to govern how we engage and how we act. This unhealthy practice will need to stop. Our conversations must be guided by facts, data, statistics, grounded in research. We have to be truth seekers and truth speakers. Principle number 4, listen not just to the facts, but also feelings. Knowing that the majority of students are new to discussions of social justice and seeking to create a supportive democratic space that will encourage participation, we consider a few guidelines. Speak for yourself instead of generalizing. It's best to use I statements. Respect differences. Challenge ideas, not people. Stay open and engage. Be responsible for your own learning. Assume good intentions and don't attack people who disagree with you. We move to principle number 5. Check your biases, prejudice, and privileges. And yes, we all have them. As you engage, be aware of domination ideologies. Sensoy and D'Angelo 2000 in their piece Respect Differences, Challenging the Common Guidelines in Social Justice Education series states, first, most students, regardless of their social identities, enter our classrooms attached to dominant ideologies. Example, society is free from racism or sexism. The only thing preventing people from success is their lack of hard work, etc., etc. This attachment is extremely difficult to dislodge. Because of this, from the very first class, we work to unsettle the invisibility and authority of dominant ideologies. These dominant ideologies often intentionally hijack the conversation. It is therefore imperative that we make space for marginalized perspectives. Oftentimes, when you are part of a group that holds a dominant view, you have no idea what the views of those who are marginalized. Take the time to listen. Allow them to speak for themselves. Pass the mic. Principle number 6. Ask questions. Start from curious. When engaging in courageous conversation, never be afraid to ask questions when you genuinely do not know the answer. One example of this is, instead of assuming someone's sexual orientation or identity, it is best to ask that person, how do they identify? You may note that there is an increasing popularity of pronoun checking at meetings. The next 4 principles come from Singleton and Linton 2006, Courageous Conversations About Race. Very good book. Principle number 7. Stay engaged. Staying engaged means remaining morally, intellectually, socially, and emotionally involved in the dialogue. To stay engaged is to not let your heart and mind check out of the conversation while leaving your body in place. When we do that, we tend to just check the box. Principle number 8, speak your truth. Speaking your truth requires a willingness to take risks. Speaking your truth means being absolutely honest about your thoughts, your feelings, and opinions, and not just saying what you perceive others want to hear. Many times we do not speak our truth out of fear of offending, appearing angry, or sounding ignorant. However, without the honesty, the dialogue is ineffective. Principle number 9, experience discomfort. Courageous conversations necessarily create discomfort for many participants. An example is, rather than experience the discomfort of interracial dialogue, people often put an emphasis on how much we are alike instead of addressing our obvious differences. If we are to effectively talk about matters of equity, inclusion, and diversity, we need to face the differences. Principle number 10. We all want to leave the conversations with closure, with a solution. The solution is revealed in the process of the conversations. Many of the topics we will discuss have long-rooted causes and consequences. There is no quick fix. Ongoing dialogue should be an essential component of any action plan. Courageous conversations promises no quick fix. That is why it is important that we have the ability and stamina to engage. How many times Have you heard or seen people's reactions when topics such as racism, anti-black oppression, gender equality, religion, equity, and poverty are brought up? It is as if they would want to say, are we talking about that again? And if so, then the response would be, yes, we are. In closing, in Ideas into Actions, a paper published by the Ministry of Education in Ontario, the article Engaging in Courageous Conversation states, if we are leading for improvement, we are inevitably leading for change and can expect some degree of discomfort, disagreement, or resistance along the way, whether on the level of the individual or the organization. Open, authentic, truthful dialogue in an atmosphere of trust and respect is the key ingredient that makes meaningful change possible. Courageous conversations are about being true to oneself, doing what is right for students, and shaping an environment that supports change.